And hey there, hi there, ho there, and a happy new year. Welcome back to another exciting edition of the Cardinal Couple Radio Hour podcast, coming to you live from various homes in the Louisville area as we prepare for an exciting show.
And one
We're
arena.
without Paulie this week, unless that was him that just chimed in and I didn't hear anything.
That was. I was just saying, and one arena.
Oh yeah, and one arena as Jared, our silent dormouse, sits in potentially to drop in some random comments that nobody else can see, but we often laugh at.
Yeah.
He popped one in right before Jeff gave me the signal to start the show today, and it threw me off for a second. But we are here, like I mentioned. Paulie not with us, as UofL women's basketball will be taking on Bellarmine in just under 59 minutes here as we record. But you have me, Case Hoskins. I'm joined by Jeff McAdams and Daryl Faust, and the aforementioned Jared the Dormouse, as he prepares to photograph today's game.
Yeah, we should say Jared is at the arena. He is on his iPhone. He has AirPods, which actually sound pretty decent, but we're worried about as more folks get in there and it gets louder, that a little bit of more background noise. So I don't know. We'll see.
He's already been interrupted like 7 times while we were
right. That too.
Show, right?
Yeah.
But since we are going to try and get things going a little bit quicker today, he's in the pool photographer room.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a chlorine pool or salt water?
I knew we were going to get some sights from Jared too.
That's right.
We are going to try and get things going a little bit quicker today than normal. Maybe not fill in the full hour, as we want to get things going for both the women's game and the... Oh, that sounds gross. Both sorry. For our non-joint participants, make sure that you can hear that what sounds gross is that Jared says that the pool in the pool photographer room is filled with Cherokee Park Creek water. Which doesn't sound very pleasant for anybody.
Actually, Beargrass Creek is the name of the creek, I believe, in there.
There's too many creeks in Louisville, and they all are all over the place.
Yeah.
It's just... Anyway, as we usually do, we'll start with scheduling and Twitter here. Today's games, Louisville women's basketball and men's basketball both playing at noon. If you're lucky enough to get Fox Sports South, you can split the screen this one. I will not be able to watch the men's game. Thanks, regional sports networks and your agreements. But men's basketball taking on Boston College. That one's an away game, which left the Center open for Louisville women to host Bellarmine at noon. That one on the ACC Network Extra, just like yesterday's game was against Northern Kentucky. Next thing on the schedule was a women's basketball game in Charlottesville. That one has been postponed, as has the later game against Pittsburgh that was scheduled for Thursday the 7th. But presumably...
lest we catch the wrath of Dana, this is the other teams having COVID issues, not UofL.
Yeah, right.
Snap back.
Yeah.
What was that person thinking? I
know, right?
We're so terrified.
After a month, if Louisville was still having positive tests, you'd run out of players to test positive.
Yeah.
Like they would have, you'd be done. They'd be playing soon anyway.
You gotta give the backstory that someone blamed Louisville for not wanting to schedule.
Yeah, they said sounds like Louisville's not handling their COVID protocols correctly, and Dana Evans just snapped back.
The Queen Dana.
Woo. Yeah, it's great.
This is what Twitter's for.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Anyway, Louisville is presumably going to play North Carolina finally. This is the third.
There's still time.
Scheduled date, right? I think so far, for January 5th, 2020. They scheduled this game for the middle of the day for reasons. I don't think that Center had any other reason to not have this game at a normal time, but this one's going to be played on January 5th, Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. Maybe it was an ACC Network choice because this one will get the ACC Network proper. That's just when they wanted to fit that one in.
Probably since it's both, North
knows?
Carolina and Louisville.
Yeah.
Who knows? But maybe they will finally play this game after many delays. Men's basketball scheduled to take on Virginia Tech at 6:30 on Wednesday, and then the previously mentioned Pittsburgh game that has been postponed wraps out the week. We move into Twitter. I tweet is at best case scenario. That's BST case scenario. Make sure you follow Dana Evans. You just have to look her up. I think she's verified. There's way too many letters. Her and Kiana Smith. There's just so many letters in their Twitter handles. Why?
That must be like hard to like tell people when you're out. You know.
Yeah.
Right.
DANAAAKIANAAA.
Yeah.
Dana Evans.
So many A's.
So many A's.
Kiana Smith doesn't even have.
It's just like Nana.
Nana. Yeah. So many. Whatever. So it goes. Daryl tweets us at DarylFaust4, and I can remember that one. It's Daryl with a Y and 4 the number, not the letters. Almost said the letter.
My golf phrase.
4, yeah, that'd be a good one. Jeff tweets us at Jeff McAdams and at Card Couple Radio. Jared will have some photos of today's game, I'm sure, as well as did another photo dump yesterday or the day before.
Mm-hmm.
He tweets us at Mr. Anderson Jared, and then follow along with our fearless leader, Paulie, who tweets us at Cardinal Couple, as he'll be at the game today. Was not in attendance yesterday, as yesterday's game was such a late schedule that they didn't have time to do any sort of ticketing or media invites, so that one was players and family and friends only.
Very quiet.
I almost felt like Don Russell and Jeff Greer were not in attendance.
They weren't.
I was wondering.
They were remote.
If they.
I think they were. It sounded like they were at the broadcast center over on Brandeis.
On Floyd.
Yeah, Brandeis Floyd area over in there. I think that's where they were.
That's so hard to do.
Yeah.
Jared agrees. Yeah, and you could tell because the announcing was just a little bit delayed to the action. Like you could formulate the thoughts as they were saying them.
Yeah.
Which is not something you'd expect when they're live and present.
He also confused Dana and Olivia Cochran a few times, and if you're in front of them too, there's no way you could confuse them. So, it's got to be like he was watching a screen and he just saw really long black hair.
Here's the thing. Don Russell knew 2 players on the floor yesterday, Dana Evans and Lindsey Duval. And every player for both teams was either one of those 2.
Yeah.
That's the vibe that I got from the game. No offense, but that was I think the awful announcing Twitter account could have had a field day if they were watching that one.
Which means I think he wasn't in attendance.
Right.
You would think, yeah.
I think they even said that on the air once, that they were at the broadcast center, broadcast studio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, they may have said it right at the beginning. I think I missed the first 2 minutes. I was returning a shelf to Lowe's. Bought too many. When you got a concrete storage room and it's 96 inches wide, you're like, all right, I'll just get 2 48-inch shelves. Nope. They are not actually 48 inches. 2 of them did not fit side by side. Oh, we've got a Paul with us.
Hey, good morning, gentlemen. Can you hear me okay?
Not very well. Too much noise.
I would attribute that to my venue, which is, of course, the KFC Yum Center. We're here for the game.
Yep.
If you see the musical interlude, I got you covered.
Yeah.
We're going to get copyright struck.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure it's recognizable. So.
But if it gets to, I'm probably going to just monitor things for the most part.
Yep.
Today, guys, and mute my mic. So glad to be with you. I look forward to the conversation, and I'm going to mute out and listen to you guys continue the show here.
Okay.
Thanks, Paul.
Go Cards, Paul.
Go Cards.
There we go. So now you know. Paulie, the fearless leader, has joined us.
Podcasts are getting nuts. 2020.
2021.
Really turned us around.
What a new year. Happy New Year to everybody, by the way. I hope that you ate your black-eyed peas or your cabbage or whatever you think is your lucky food. I didn't have any of those. Yeah. My wife doesn't like black-eyed peas, and I don't like cabbage, so we say no to traditions.
What did I eat?
Yeah, I've never done that tradition either.
Nothing
I had
fancy.
leftover pizza. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm going to have some of that right after the show.
Nice.
We say no to traditions so much around this house that we watched Love It or List It and fell asleep and woke up at 12:01. Flipped it over to listen to Auld Lang Syne or whatever on whichever broadcast it was. It was a thrilling night here in the Hoskins household. But before we get too far, we've talked a little bit about that Northern Kentucky game, so let's get into it. Louisville wins 74-64, a close game throughout. The largest lead for Louisville in this one was just 11 points. The largest lead for Northern Kentucky was 5. I think that's probably the tightest swing that Louisville's had this year, with a maximum difference of just 16 points there. I think every other game has been much more than that since Louisville has won every other game by more than that. But, Jeff, take it away. What did we see in yesterday's game against Northern?
The main thing that struck me was the first half shooting for the Cardinals was just not very good. By the end of the game, the percentages were decent. I'm not gonna say they're spectacular, but they were decent. The first half shooting was just really terrible. Wide open layups clanking off the rim. Just you don't expect from this team. And the inclination is to look at how long of a layoff they had with the pause and scheduling challenges and say, wow, it took them a little bit to get back into the groove of things and actually getting back up to playing speed. I'm kind of glad we didn't play Miami with no practice, because that wasn't a thought at one point that might happen. I'm not sure that game would have turned out well, given that, the difficulties coming back off of a break like that. So that was the main thing that struck me. They did get better in the second half, better shooting in the second half. Over 50% field goal, 40% from three, 30 and 40% sort of range for 3-point shooting, which is quite reasonable. Brought up the overall averages up to decent numbers. So that was the main thing that struck me. Just some real kind of rust on the game there to start out with.
Yeah, you mentioned that poor shooting. I think it is clearest when you look at Dana Evans and Haley Van Lith. Dana finished 4 of 8 from beyond the arc. I wasn't quite sure why Don Russell was lambasting her for her 3-point shooting in the second quarter. I think she'd only taken like 4. But she finished 4 of 8 from 3, but just 3 of 12 from 2-point land. Haley Van Lith finished 3 of 8 from 2. Those two just really struggled, like you mentioned, missing open layups, missing the short jumpers that we've seen them hit a lot throughout this season. I think they're likely to be a lot better today against Bellarmine. Bellarmine's field goal defense has not been good, so we'll probably see that bounce back. We should hope.
Hey, Polly.
There's the people in college.
and just to make it.
Whoops, sorry. Sorry about that. I can't unmute him now. I was trying to bounce back. I thought maybe he accidentally muted, but we're going to move on. Sorry, Paul. What do you got?
Yeah, let's just not forget, guys, a couple of things about that game yesterday. It had been 23 days since we had played anybody beside ourselves. And Northern Kentucky played really good defense against the Cards.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that aspect. Sure, they had a slow start to the season, but they had won 4 in a row coming into this, and they had a player who knew the UofL system for having 3 years of experience playing in it in Lindsey Duval. So let's not forget last year when we played them up there, and it was a 2-point game at halftime as well. So, it was a rough start, but they won. It's a W. It counts the same as if they'd won by 40. And let's move on.
Yep.
I agree. I want to touch off that, like, just more than just stats from this game, because you got to talk about the timeline of this week for this team. That Coach Walls in his show on Tuesday said that they were just allowed to start gathering with each other and have practice on Sunday. And they had practiced like 5 times by the time we talked to them. Throw in the fact that we were going to play North Carolina, then we weren't. Coach Walls is like, he's got to be the hardest working man in the program, I swear. He's like doing his radio show while texting all these coaches in his text chain. He started the show and, wasn't confirmed that we would play this weekend. By the end of the show, he says, we're definitely playing this weekend. And then we get to the end of the week and it's like, oh, we've got 2 games. And it's like a little mini tournament with local teams. And I just think it's so cool, like that we can have, play 2 games this weekend, fingers crossed, nothing crazy happens in the next 45 minutes. But just like think about all those things and, how we started preparing for these other teams. Yeah, the ball was coming off the rim against Northern Kentucky. Those shots really should have gone in. And luckily we were able to pull ahead in that third quarter and get the win. And I hope we get another one and stay undefeated.
Yeah, you mentioned just the late additions of these teams. I think Wednesday they announced the Bellarmine game. And really, I think that it was the women's basketball Facebook page that accidentally broke that news before it was officially announced, creating the game event before anybody knew that there was a game that was going to be happening.
There's some good research by our hard couple reporters here.
Right.
Yeah. So there was that late addition, and then we all go into Thursday thinking, okay, well, we're going to play a game against Bellarmine. That'll be great. First Division I matchup between the 2 schools. I think that'll be really exciting. A historical thing. Now there's the 2 Division I universities in the city. Louisville has not had that for quite some time, so I think we'll see a lot of the programs playing against each other. Looking forward to that one kicking off today, but we expect that that's just what it's going to be. We'll go into that one. We lose the game against Virginia. I think we had 4 or 5 schedule changes from Tuesday until yesterday. So you're thinking we'll play Bellarmine, we'll go into the game against North Carolina, and we'll move on. And then at the 11th hour, this game against NKU gets announced. There's not even time to do media invites. There's not time for any sort of ticketing at all. This one was basically a closed door scrimmage that actually counted. And NKU came in and they put up a good fight. Like you mentioned, it was that run in the late of third quarter that put Louisville ahead. They were ultimately able to hold on to that one. If they hadn't been able to go on that run, or if NKU had been able to cut it just a little bit shorter, this could have been a really interesting game in the fourth quarter. And it ultimately was a really interesting game in the fourth quarter. Northern cut it back down to 3 again before Louisville was able to stretch it back out. But definitely,
Dana Evans really took it over.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
She's
man.
like, we're going to get this lead back, and we're not going to lose it.
Yeah.
You could see it. She was doing everything.
Definitely. And I think another thing that's something you have to think about for these players is they put the non-conference season behind them, right? Like they had moved into conference mode, and then ultimately all those games had gotten canceled. But you're still thinking, the next game we're going to play is a conference game. You rescheduled UNC a bunch of times. They're probably watching a lot of film on UNC, and Northern Kentucky is not North Carolina. I don't know if anybody's watched either of those 2 teams, but they're not the same. Louisville definitely had their hands full, like we mentioned. And like Paul mentioned, Lindsay Duval coming out with a lot of knowledge. She was really comfortable in the Yum Center. She finished with 20 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists. She was definitely the player that drove that team. And then Ivy Turner for Northern Kentucky as well flirted with a triple-double, finishing with 8, 9, and 7. So it was a great game from Northern Kentucky. They really put up a good fight, and Louisville was just able to get it done in the long run. And like we mentioned, this game against Bellarmine should be an easier one for Louisville, but I think after yesterday's game, they're not going to be overlooking any opponents, no matter how easy they may seem.
Yeah, Yeah, it's Bellarmine. You think is probably not going to be as good as Northern Kentucky. Northern Kentucky's been playing some good basketball in the past years. Moved up to Division One. Bellarmine is brand new to Division One, and you look at some of the stats of their season. We were talking about this before the show started. Bellarmine's not looking great right now. They've lost a lot of games. They've been outscored pretty dramatically over the course of the whole season, but every game they play, they look better, and their stats get better. So they're learning quickly. They're improving quickly. So yeah, I mean, I always say you can't ever take anything for advantage jumping into games, but take for granted. So this is certainly one of those where it's like, you got to show up and play, particularly when it's on such a short turnaround from the previous game. It's less than 24 hours. So
yeah, you mentioned they have been getting better every single game. They've also been adding players. Lauren Deal has been their leading scorer throughout the year, but that's on volume alone. She's averaging 10.5 points a game. Over the last 2 games, they've added Brea Torrens, who has scored 16 points a game in those 2. And then I can't recall her name here. It's Tasha something. If I get Bellarmine's roster pulled up here. She scored 17 in their last game.
Jeffries.
Is that it? That
must be it. Jeffries, senior.
Yep. Scored 17 in their last game. So they've been getting, and that's the only game she's played in. So they've been constantly adding some more players back, and like you mentioned, Jeff, getting better each game. That deficit has fallen in each game. They only lost by 10 in the last one, after being outscored, like you mentioned, overall 331 to 210 this season. So definitely struggling. But that last game was against Evansville. It was just a few days ago, so they're riding a high.
And
we a little bit more rest.
Played Evansville a few times over the years, and they're not a bad team. So they're mid-major level, but they're again one of those teams that you got to be careful of. They can jump up and surprise you. So for Bellarmine to be able to play at that level against them, yeah, okay, yeah, let's keep an eye on it. Let's not take it for granted.
And that's what stood out to me, Case. The deficit getting smaller as they played more games. And the first game I think they played was like not that long ago. But didn't they have like a COVID issue at the beginning of the season? So like players aren't exactly as healthy. Like I've seen players just like kind of be winded after they've been tested positive or something, or had symptoms with this, and it just takes them a second to get back rolling. So I think that could have affected the Cards yesterday too.
Yeah, Louisville and Bellarmine were originally scheduled to play on December 6th, I believe is what it was. Bellarmine was one of those teams like UConn, who was also early on Louisville's schedule, that wound up canceling a bunch of their games before the season even started. You mentioned they just played their first game on December 14th against Ball State. So, yeah, they've played all 5 of their games. Sorry, all 4. This will be their 5th. All 4 of their games have come since the middle of December. And then with the holiday break in there, you consider that week off. And, they've been playing a pretty busy schedule. Directly contrasting Louisville, they've played all of their games since Louisville played their last game before yesterday's. So,
boy, I'm excited. Gosh.
So this should be interesting. That first loss, those first 2 games really kind of skew their season. A really bad game to open their Division One career.
Huge, 98-42. Ouch.
Yeah, just blasted by Ball State. And then against Western Kentucky, they turned it around, doing 20 points better in a road game. Still lost 49-82, but have turned it around since then, like we mentioned, losing to Evansville by just 10 on Tuesday. And Paulie mentioned that Jeff Walz should be pretty familiar with 2 of Bellarmine's top scorers, as Brea Torrens and Tasha Jeffries both went to Butler, which I did not realize. So they both come from the city and should have some familiarity. You would expect that Jeff Walz has a pretty good idea of most players in the Louisville area that are going to be good enough to play college basketball, particularly in D1. Bellarmine wasn't D1 when they joined, to be sure, but it's not like Bellarmine basketball hasn't been D1 adjacent, on both the men's and women's side for quite a while.
Another thing is, like, they're both the same year, and they've been playing together for like ever. That's a little scary.
Yeah.
That's a pair that's been playing together for, like you mentioned, about 8 years. So
should
be interesting.
Very cool, though. I'm glad we get to play against Belgium.
Got some band
Those are
noise
some
in
good
there.
sounds.
Yeah.
got some band noise in there. As we move forward, what are your? Let's do some predictions. Just some quick predictions for UofL versus Bellarmine. What are we thinking after yesterday's game against Northern Kentucky?
I think Haley Van Lith has a better showing today.
Yeah, I would expect the UofL team to be in the groove a little more, to have knocked the rust off yesterday. I expect the play we'll see against Bellarmine is more like the second half play from yesterday than the first half play. They're in the groove. They're back out there. They're back used a little bit to being on the floor against another opponent and playing. So I would look for higher scoring overall in general, and probably a lot of strong defensive play that's going to really cause problems for a Bellarmine team that maybe isn't used to playing quite on this level.
Yeah, you mentioned the pace and playing strong defensively and scoring better. I think Northern Kentucky tried to run with UofL to a certain extent yesterday, which, again, the pace of the game was such that it was one that you'd expect Louisville to score. Louisville didn't turn the ball over that much, and they didn't shoot that poorly. I don't know how they only scored 74 points, but that's where we are.
Because of the first half.
Because of the first half. If Bellarmine tries to run with Louisville at all, it's going to be a problem. And even if they don't try to run with Louisville, if they're incapable of preventing Louisville from setting that pace, they're going to be in for a long day. Will it be as bad as that game against Ball State? Maybe. Probably not. I think that Louisville still is probably going to have some rust to shake off. I think they'll be a lot better than they were yesterday in the first half in particular. But it's not like they were world beaters in the second half either. They did still allow Northern Kentucky to hang around outside of that 17-2 run. That was really the difference in that game, was that big run at the end of the third quarter. And NKU did a lot of work to try and stay in it. And ultimately, it was about a 5-point game before free throws to wrap it up in the last minute.
Well, NKU is a much better team than Bellarmine is. Sorry, I'm just pulling up Bellarmine's schedule on their record. They're 0-4 on the year.
Are you sitting right next to their coach?
Oh no! I'm
sorry, Jay.
Sitting there, still just looking at the record online. They haven't scored more than 62 points this year. They've been held as low as 42. It looks like they're giving up an average of low 80s per game. So Bellarmine's still adjusting to Division I, and some of these games have come against teams like Ball State University and University of Evansville. They also had losses Western Illinois and then also Western Kentucky. So they're not at the level of Northern Kentucky by far. And I think now that Louisville's got a game under their belt yesterday and they're kind of back in the swing of things, that this one could get ugly quick. This is one of those games where you see the Cards go up big at halftime and then just kind of hit cruise control in the second half and let the bench players take over and finish it out. So personally, I'm not overly worried about it, other than the fact that maybe our team's still getting a little conditioned after being off for a month.
Jared, before you go down to take some pregame photos, what's your score prediction for this one if you think it's going to be a blowout?
Yeah, let's go on, and I'm going to put the Cards. I think they're going to find their offensive rhythm again. I'm going to put Louisville wins this one 90-65. So I'm going to go big blowout here.
Yeah, big scoring. Yeah.
Jeff, what do you got?
Sitting next to Coach.
I'm going to say I think we're going to score a lot, but no, probably not that much. I'm going to say 83-57.
Daryl?
Ugh, I hate these things. I think the team's still gonna be a little rusty. Just maybe a little winded, getting over the holidays. So I think it'll be lower scoring. Let's say 70s to 50s.
That's very vague, but I'm going to write
Yeah.
literally 70s to 50s.
You're writing it down. I heard that.
Yeah.
I am. I am going to. I made this mistake earlier this year when Louisville kept scoring really high, and I was like, "There's no way they do it again." And then they dropped 116 on DePaul. I don't know that Louisville has knocked off all of the rust, but man, there's going to have to be a lot of rust left for them to not just blow the doors off Bellarmine. I think it's. I think Haley Van Lith is going to have a chip on her own shoulder from herself from the performance that she had yesterday. Dana, likewise, I mentioned, just 3 of 12 from inside the arc. You're really not expecting that kind of percentage from inside. Haley Van Lith is going to hope that more of her passes that find her teammates right in the middle of the paint for an easy layup go in the basket instead of falling off the rim. I could see. If Ball State can score 100 on Bellarmine and Freedom Hall, I think that Louisville can score 100 on Bellarmine in the Center, right? If you consider yesterday's game was the primer for coming back from the big hiatus, then this game is the tune-up before you re-enter conference play. Mm-hmm. And I think that Jeff Walz is probably making that same point. And I can't get over it. It's skewed to the first 2 games, like I mentioned, Bellarmine's record and their stats, but I can't get over allowing 50% opponent field goal percentage and only shooting 30% on the year. Even if you're bringing all your other players back, that's tough to overcome. I think Louisville probably wins this one 101 to 64. I think that they get out to a really good start. I think this one's in hand before halftime, like Jared said. And that the bench kind of gives up some defensively, which lets them close that gap a little bit. Not much, but a little bit. So that's mine. 101 to 64. We'll see here in just a couple hours how right any of us were, if any of us were right. And Louisville comes out and wins this one 50 to 26. And none of us know anything.
Now, Bellarmine does have the height, looking at the roster, to match UofL. They've got a couple 6'3" players, a 6'2", and then a couple 5'11" players. But I'm just not sure if Bellarmine's going to be at that same conditioning level that Louisville is. Yeah. We're used to Louisville running that fast-paced offense, full court pressure on defense. It's tough for any team to keep up, even when you're getting up to the top 10 opponent matchups that we see. So I'm just not sure Bellarmine's going to be able to keep up as UofL wears them down throughout the game.
Yeah, and Louisville doesn't depend on height that much. We don't depend on our bigs all that much. Obviously, Olivia Cochran's in there. Liz Dixon jumps in there some, right? I mean, so we make use of them. But like against Northern Kentucky, a couple of times we had 5 guards out on the floor, right? Now, one of those guards was 5'11", but, you have a 5-guard lineup out there. You're running, you're gunning, you're keeping the pace up. So, yeah, Jared, I think you're absolutely right. Pace and speed of play is going to come into play here. Speaking
of height, I want to throw out, I think that Olivia Cochran will be dunking by the end of her career here.
It's a possibility.
She takes up so much room on the floor. Did you see her passing yesterday? The way the ball would go in, she'd get it back out. She was great.
She was doing great stuff.
Yeah, Louisville's 3-point shooting woes really prevented her from getting any assists, I think, on the day. Yeah. She was interestingly quiet. Both her and Liz Dixon were pretty quiet on the boards. They both were 6 of 8 from the floor, which is really good. That's what you expect out of your bigs. But they combined for only 8 rebounds. Out of Louisville's 45, 2 of the guards had more than that. E. Balagoon finished with 8. Kiana Smith finished with 10 on her way to her first Louisville double-double. Even Dana Evans had 6. So Obviously, Dana Evans played for 37 minutes, so far more than the next highest player, which was Van Lith with 31, and then the next highest was Kiana with 27. So she kind of had that. To her credit, she kind of cheated, but you would expect that Louisville's bigs would get more rebounding. I saw a lot bounce off their hands yesterday watching that game. Louisville was just kind of unable to secure some of those rebounds. I don't think they'll have those issues today, even going up against some size from Bellarmine. I think that Louisville is, like I said, I think that yesterday was the, hey, we're back, and then today is the, hey, we're getting ready. I think that everything will look a lot cleaner today than it did yesterday. And if it doesn't, then Louisville maybe has some concerns moving forward.
Okay, so I liked the way you said that, and I wanted to finish it. You said, "Hey, we're back," but I feel like the finishing of that line should be, "But we never left."
There you go. So speaking of moving forward, Louisville has this game today, and then they are, like I mentioned, presumably finally going to play North Carolina on Tuesday.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. The third rescheduling. Well, I guess only the second rescheduling. The third scheduled date for this game, after the one before the Christmas break was scuttled by Louisville's COVID issues. Did we ever really get a reason for why it was pushed from yesterday? Why they didn't play this game yesterday?
And I think it's very interesting. Now, think about the North Carolina and Kentucky are both in different governments, technically. And Coach Walls said that the two team doctors were talking to each other. Now, you'd think that they'd have a little bit of different protocols just because of their two state local governments being a little different. And he said that something about the way North Carolina planned on traveling back to North Carolina, they would be on a bus for 8 hours and in close contact with each other, and that's just too long according to their protocols. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But you'd think they would consider all these things before they told Louisville that they were good to go on Monday. You know, that's what was so annoying is Louisville put the release out that the game was on schedule, and then come to find out they had travel issues and they had to recant their statement, and it kind of just makes everybody work harder, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I get that this is all really being done seat of the pants, ad hoc, last minute. Everybody's scrambling to try to do things, and so some of those things may get overlooked initially. But man, it's a little bit of it causes a lot of frustration in the community and the fan base, and I'm sure among staff and players as well, to have that constant unknown and constant changing. Somewhat laughingly, I sent a text to our group chat. I saw that, at 11:58 yesterday, or pardon me, at 2:58, I guess it was. It was a 3:00 game. And it's like, well, I'm getting excited that we're actually going to get to play a game, but I don't want to get overconfident. We'd still have 2 minutes left for this to get canceled. So it's like,
that's what I'm writing. I'm like, I don't want to put anything in writing as being certain, but right. I also don't want to say if, because I don't want to jinx it. It's
right.
Well, I think what's weird is if that's their reasoning, they're going on the road to play Pittsburgh. Oh, nope, that game's been postponed now. They were supposed to play Pittsburgh on Sunday, and now they're not. Which I guess
because
we should have.
Because of Pittsburgh? Right?
I would think so, because Pittsburgh had to postpone their game against Louisville later next week.
Right,
so I guess they're not traveling to Pittsburgh before traveling here to play Louisville.
But the difference could be, I guess, if they were going to fly or ride a bus. I think they couldn't find a flight home on Monday after the game, which would have put them on a bus, but a bus is too small and for too long. Does that make sense? It's all very, very small.
No, it doesn't make sense, but not from your explanation. It just doesn't make sense in the abstract, I don't think. But that's okay. Protocols are what they are, and for better or for worse.
So, that aside, the obvious scheduling issues that everyone has had aside, let's take a look at North Carolina, the team. They are 7-2 on the year. They are 2-2 in conference play. They've already gotten revenge against Wake Forest. They opened the conference season on December 10th against the Demon Deacons and lost that game 54-57 in Winston-Salem. They hosted them on December 20th for the return game and won that one by 3 in overtime. So a couple of close games between them. They beat Syracuse pretty handedly on December 17th, and they were supposed to get an opportunity Tuesday or Thursday, I suppose, to play Syracuse again. That one was postponed, as basically any pick two teams that were supposed to play each other, chances are they didn't play when they were originally supposed to. Their other loss came against Miami, 63-67. In the non-conference, they didn't play anybody really of
so
note.
I was just looking at nobody significant here. UNC Greensboro, maybe the best.
Charlotte probably their toughest game there.
Yeah,
and the score reflects it.
Yeah.
They beat Charlotte by 6. South Carolina State, it barely counts as a D1 program.
Right.
They won that game by 70. So
yeah, I say UNC Greensboro, they won by 60.
61.
Yeah, 61. So that's the one I was looking at, going, well, maybe that's that. But yeah, no.
You see this with a lot, I think, in the states of Kentucky and North Carolina. There are these two huge basketball states, right? The same thing in Indiana, but their top teams aren't quite as top as North Carolina and Kentucky's teams are. But you have so many other schools that are like, yes, we also play basketball because basketball is our state sport, but they're not very good at it. But they schedule all the teams because they're right there in the area, especially this year.
Yeah, especially this season.
Sense. But so you played teams like High Point and UNC Greensboro and Radford, and so what? I mean, you got your games in. North Carolina already has 9. They're well on their way to qualifying for an NCAA opportunity. They've lost. Their 2 losses both came on the road. I think that's an interesting note since they're going to be coming to the Center. What are you thinking about North Carolina? I just scrolled down their schedule a little bit further and saw a canceled game. I was like, canceled instead of postponed. It's Duke. They're not playing any more games.
Right.
All their games are canceled. So what are your guys' thoughts on North Carolina this season and how they stack up against Louisville?
I know I'd rather get this game over with. I am tired of hearing about North Carolina, and I feel like Coach Walls is too. But he wants to get the game in.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the scheduling challenges is part of the story, but you want to get the game in, you want to play the game, against a decent team, from what we can tell. It's hard to know. Sometimes early in the season you don't have a whole lot of material to go on to do analysis, but we've got a couple of good games here, competitive games again in conference. It looks like they're a decent team, probably not going to be top of the ACC, but, again, you can never take a day off in the ACC. So, yeah, look at them coming in, and I just don't know much about this team yet to do much analysis with.
I'll be interested to see Cochran and Janelle Bailey under the basket. I think that's a good matchup. We've got senior Bailey, finally. I wonder, he's just been around for so long.
Indeed.
And freshman Cochran, it'll be a really good test. And I really think that that's a good reason Coach Walls wants to get it in. Not only do he wants to get all these conference games into, he has a really good team, and he knows it, and he wants to get all the required games on the schedule for the tournament because, he's just like chomping at the bit with this team. He's like wants to show how good they are, and he wants to showcase them, and he's got all these stars on his team, and it's Dana's senior season. And something else I noticed is the lack of representation in the top 25 from the ACC, and I think we said Syracuse is on pause now. They're the only one representing, and North Carolina beat them the first time, but then that second one got postponed. So I think this is going to be a good one. I think it'll be good for the Cards. I think they'll ultimately get the W against them. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking there.
Just looking through their roster, here's one thing I noticed. They've got a couple of graduate students. Senior Janelle Bailey, you mentioned. They have one redshirt junior, and then the rest are all freshmen and sophomores. It's a fairly young team, leavening of some senior players in there, but fairly young team overall. So that'll be interesting to see how they handle a challenging year.
Yeah, that year, or that game against Syracuse, I think is the one that interests me the most about North Carolina. They won that game by 24, 92-68. Syracuse is not bad. They opened the season with a tough win against Stony Brook, dominated Lincoln. Then they beat Penn State. They beat Miami at Miami. They beat Boston College at Boston College, and by double digits. All of their wins are by double digits. Just that loss to North Carolina that stands out as very strange. Syracuse ranked for a reason, so it's weird that they were thumped so soundly by North Carolina. This team may be more than we're maybe giving them credit for based on the performances against Wake and Miami.
And Bailey had quite the game against Syracuse. I'm looking at her stats. She had 25 points on 10 of 15, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, a block, and 2 steals. And Deja Kelly, I think she's a freshman guard, also had double digits, 22 points, and she played for 38 minutes, the most out of anybody.
Nice. That's pretty impressive. So, yeah.
This is going to be an interesting one. Petra Helsinki, maybe is how you say her name. She finished with 21 in that game as well.
You see her name on the stat sheet.
It's all question marks.
Yeah, because it's not.
Just guessing at what the fouls were because I don't have them pulled up. Just this box score. She had 21 in that game. So
wow, off the bench.
Yeah, they can definitely score. It looks like. I think we'll have a lot more information about how back Louisville is, right?
I'm going to take a shot at pronouncing that name. She's from the Czech Republic, for what it's worth.
I never would have guessed, Jeff.
Yeah, I know. Holešinska would be how I would guess that. Having spent a whopping 5 days in the Czech Republic, maybe a little more than that, 7. But so, yeah.
The broadcast crew is going to have fun with that one.
Yep. I wonder who's on the call.
John Russell's on it. He's just going to pick one of their other players. Every time.
Just go with Kelly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they can definitely score. It's out there. There's a game in between, but what do you guys think we're going to see between these two before we wrap it up?
I expect a more defensively oriented game as you get higher quality opponents coming here to play. I would expect a score in the 60s to 70s sort of range. Are we putting specific scores on this?
No.
Yeah,
it's way too hard to tell. Both because Louisville still has this game against Bellarmine, and there's not a lot to go off of from yesterday's game against Northern, and also because at this stage of the season you'd expect to have a lot more information for both teams to go off of, and we just don't have it.
Yep.
Yeah. I just looking at the Bellarmine game today, I don't think they're going to be. I think, like Jeff said, it's going to be a better defensive game. They're not going to be able to score more at will like Northern was. I think that the fact that Lindsay Duval was on the other side of the ball really played a huge factor yesterday. But I think the Cards will put the brakes on Bellarmine more today, and then trying to get back in the swing of ACC play and, staying atop the conference standings. The North Carolina game will be a lot closer, maybe even a last-second sort of win.
That's scary to think about buzzer beaters.
Scary.
I'd much rather think about the potential for an overtime game than to think about a buzzer beater win or loss, which makes no sense because they go hand in hand typically. But this North Carolina, it's going to be an interesting game. Definitely think everybody should be ready to tune in for this one on Tuesday, 2:30 in the middle of the workday. Just have your boss turn it on the TV, or just pull it up on your computer. They make this great thing called streaming television. So
my boss is in London. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Have them turn it on the TV.
Yeah.
At 2:30, it's a perfect evening viewing for them. 8:30 p.m. Right, or 7:30, whichever. I never remember
7:30
timing works.
Yeah. 5 hours.
Yeah, there you go. So it'll be interesting to get ACC play officially kicked back off, I guess.
Yeah.
With Louisville's only ACC game so far taking place against a Duke team that's bowed out of the conference for the remainder of the year.
How does that work in the standings?
They will remain in the standings at 0-1, I guess.
Wow.
They'll be skipped for seeding for the tournament, but you can't just
weird like history book thing to think about. Like,
Yeah.
are they just gonna be no, that year didn't happen?
Yeah, there's going to be asterisks all over the basketball or any sport history book for 2020 and 2021. I mean, just get those asterisk stamps ready.
We're just gonna mark our papers 2020 asterisk.
So as we move on from the on-court action, we had a little bit of off-court news. Nya Greene, who announced that she was transferring in the middle of last month, has announced her new home. Interestingly, she will stay in conference and not head back to her home state of Texas, as we all predicted. She announced yesterday on Instagram that she would be joining the Duke Blue Devils. I don't know how that's going to work.
Right? Like, what goes on with eligibility there?
Right. She played in only a couple of games for us, and then they're not going to play at all. So does she just get to play immediately next year?
I mean, I think she's probably going to anyway because of exceptions.
She get a waiver, maybe.
Yeah, who knows?
It's the in the conference thing for me.
Yeah,
that's the don't like that, but it's good for her. I'm sure Coach Walls supports it and wants to play against wants to have a competitive league. So I'm sure he encouraged her and wishes her the best.
Yeah, a shame, like we mentioned when she announced that she was transferring, a shame to be losing a player of her caliber. But it is what it is.
That only means that we have better, right?
We must. If she was willing to get out because she wasn't getting on the floor, you would suspect that means that we have better players. We've seen some late developing players under Coach Walls. We've also seen plenty that just, can't get onto the floor, and they bow out later rather than sooner. So to Nya Greene's credit, getting out early and going to be making the most of the remainder of her career. Hopefully she can do that at Duke and never get to beat Louisville, but have a successful career otherwise.
Yeah.
So agreed. Amen.
We mentioned we'd wrap it up a little bit early, so let's go ahead and move into final thoughts. Jeff, what do you got?
Just a happy new year. 2020 is over. I don't think anybody's going to lament that. Hopefully 2021 will be a better year. We still have a lot of societal challenges in front of us, but be safe with the virus. We've still got a ways to go to deal with COVID-19 and our community in the United States. Let's take the new year and take the opportunity to hopefully make it a better one.
Agreed. Daryl?
As far as me, let's get these 2 games underway. Got the men's and the women's both playing. Gonna be tuning in for those. I hope everybody stays healthy, has a happy new year, and I get back to the Yum Center sometime soon. I haven't been to anything, and I don't really plan on it, but until it's kind of normal and I don't have to wear a mask. But that'll be weird. Has anybody thought about the first time we'll be able to go out and not wear a mask?
Not wear a mask. That is going to be weird.
I might keep it up in the winter though. It keeps my face warm.
Right, it's warmer. Yeah.
I know. But yeah, I just want to treat every game like it's gonna be the last because it could. And go Cards.
Yeah. I'm gonna wrap up. We'll have another show before this, but I'm still looking forward to the NWSL draft. Everybody should put that on their calendars. It's going to be not this upcoming Wednesday, but the following on the 13th of January. We'll be excited to see what Racing Louisville does, whether they'll keep anybody in the Louisville soccer family. A couple options from UofL, as well as the big one that everybody's going to be looking for is where Amina Ekic will end up continue her professional career. So looking forward to that. Maybe Allison Whitfield will get back on the court after her surgery, or on the field after her surgeries, and maybe get into a tryout with Louisville. That'd be fun. But that's what I'm looking forward to. And just to echo what Jeff said, as we get on out of here, hope everybody has a safe and happy New Year. Not a New Year's Day and not a New Year's Eve, because those are gone, but a new year as we turn the page on 2020 and move into 2021 with hopes for a better year moving forward. So that's what we've got.
Cool.
Everybody have a good one.
Thanks.
All right. See you all later.